Have you ever wondered what the shortest recorded war in history was, or why it even happened? This is the story of the Anglo-Zanzibar War, a brief conflict between the British Empire and the Sultanate of Zanzibar that only lasted for about 38 minutes. Long before the war occurred, the Sultanate of Zanzibar had been under British influence for decades. However, Zanzibar was not a traditional colony, but rather a British protectorate. This status meant that while Zanzibar still had some degree of internal autonomy and self-governance, its foreign affairs and defense were under the control of the British Empire. This was due to its strategic location of the East African coast and its importance as a center of trade. Zanzibar's economy relied heavily on the export of goods and slaves, and the British had established themselves as key players in the region's affairs. So what exactly caused the war between Britain and the Sultanate of Zanzibar? On August 25, 1896, the death of Sultan Hamad bin Thawani, who had been a pro-British ruler, triggered a succession crisis. His passing set the stage for the conflict, as two candidates emerged to claim the throne, Sultan Khalid bin Bargash and Sultan Hamoud bin Mohammed. But ambition and opportunity led Sultan Khalid to quickly assert his claim to the throne, declaring himself Sultan on August 26, 1896, only hours after the death of Sultan Hamad. However, his rise to power posed a direct challenge to British control in the region. The British, who favored the more compliant Hamoud, immediately moved to assert their influence and enforce their preferred candidate's succession. Wasting no time, British consul Basil Cave issued an ultimatum to Sultan Khalid, demanding his resignation and recognition of Hamoud as the legitimate sultan. This ultimatum was delivered on August 27, 1896, and specified a deadline of 9 a.m. for Khalid to comply with British demands, failing which military action would follow. As the deadline approached, the British Royal Navy took decisive action. 3 cruisers, HMS Raccoon, HMS Thrush, and HMS Sparrow, were quickly dispatched to the waters near Zanzibar under the command of Rear Admiral Harry Rawson. Positioned strategically off the coast, the British Royal Navy stood ready to enforce the ultimatum by any means necessary. When Khalid refused to yield to British pressure by the appointed time, the Royal Navy immediately moved to assert its dominance. At exactly 9:02 a.m. on August 27, 1896, the British warships unleashed a barrage of cannon fire upon the Sultan's palace and the nearby Beit al-Hukum palace where Khalid had taken refuge. The bombardment was characterized by precision and overwhelming firepower, which quickly weakened Khalid's minor defenses. Faced with the relentless attack of British artillery, Khalid's forces were beaten within minutes. Realizing how pointless the resistance was, Khalid fled the palace, leaving behind his aspirations of power. His surrender marked the instant and conclusive victory of the British forces. Casualties for the British were remarkably low, with only 1 British sailor sustaining injuries during this brief engagement. In contrast, around 500 of Khalid's people were killed or wounded in the attack. With Khalid's defeat, Sultan Hamoud was eventually installed as the ruler of Zanzibar under British guidance. The Anglo-Zanzibar War solidified British control over the Sultanate, marking a critical moment in the region's colonial history. Zanzibar would remain a British protectorate for decades to come, until finally achieving its independence in 1963.